Hey everybody, Lee Perkins here. Man, you're in for a real treat today because today's show is an interview with my good friend David Brooks. Now, David is an advisor just like me, and he's out in Omaha, Nebraska. And he's known around the country as a leader in tax planning, and this guy really knows this stuff. And as you'll hear from listening to him, he's unlike anybody that I've ever met. As a matter of fact, he's got such a knowledge of the tax code and how to use that tax code to help his clients pay less taxes over their lifetime. He's so good at this that he actually trains advisors all over the country, and these people pay him thousands and thousands of dollars so he can teach them some of the strategies that he knows so they can help their own clients. I actually went to his tax training class maybe about 2 years ago, and I just returned from it for a second time. And we recorded this episode just a couple of days before I visited his office because I wanted to go and hear what he has to say about everything that's going on with taxes, because a lot's changed since I was there 2 years ago. And so I can tell you that without a doubt, the strategies that I learned from him have helped me save my clients literally tens of thousands of dollars, and in a lot of cases, hundreds of thousands of dollars in lifetime taxes. He talks really, really fast, so sit back, take notes, rewind if you have to, and I think you'll enjoy the conversation. So without further delay, here's my conversation with David Brooks.
Welcome to the My Retirement Clarity Podcast, where our goal is simple: to help you close the gap between what you know and what you implement. The team at J.L. Perkins Wealth Management does this by helping good people make great decisions so they can enjoy an amazing retirement. And now, here's your host and financial advisor, Lee Perkins.
Thank you so much for joining in to the podcast today. I've got a little bit different show than we've had in the past. I've got a special guest, a buddy of mine, David Brooks. He is from Omaha, Nebraska. We are actually part of the same organization, kind of a world-class organization that helps independent financial advisors just grow their business and learn and really better serve their clients. And so I actually met David through that group, but a few years ago, I actually attended one of his trainings. So David I refer to him as a guru, a tax guru. And for those of y'all that listened to the show in the past, I kind of talk down a little bit on gurus, but I'm really talking about investment gurus, people that say they can predict the stock market, all that kind of stuff. But David is the real deal when it comes to taxes. And so that's why I wanted to have him on the show today. So David, man, I appreciate you taking some time to jump in, and hopefully this will be good for our listeners, and they can walk away with some actionable items here today.
No, absolutely. And it's great to jump on with you. And the same thing, we're going to take this and post it onto our podcast and to our YouTube channel for our listeners up here. They love when I communicate with other advisors. It's become very popular now. We've done a lot of these where it's great because independent fiduciary-based advisors just talking with each other. The old saying, iron sharpens iron, and clients want to know you're consistently improving yourself, getting the best actionable items you can do for your clients, putting them in the best possible situation. As you mentioned, you came to what we call our tax mastermind. In fact, I've got 18 guys coming and gals coming next week. We're hosting our most recent tax mastermind where we'll have 18 independent advisors around the country come to Omaha for 3 days, and you kind of sat through that. It's a whirlwind of me.
Right, and I'm actually I'm coming back next week for
awesome. I don't even know who's on the list, right?
Yeah, you probably haven't seen the list. But yeah, so come back for a refresher, because I know you got some new stuff. A lot of it
we do. So
learning the same.
Well, I mean, I will tell you what's really changed here recently, and for your listening audience, one of the things I would tell them to focus on is, and again, who cares who you personally vote for? I mean, I care, but I don't want to get into the politics of it. Just so your audience knows, I am a registered independent. My wife is a registered Republican, but I typically pull the lever on the right side of the aisle simply because I am a fiscal conservative and I really watch legislative and tax policy. And under what we have coming, we just crossed $35 trillion in debt 2 days ago. And that is insurmountable. That means we have to pay 1.4 trillion at the end of this year will be our interest expense on the debt. That will overtake Medicaid. So it's already overtaken defense spending. And then next year, it's going to overtake Medicare. And the following year, it will overtake Social Security. And in 3 years, it will be the number one line item in our federal budget every year. And so what you want to look at, again, I don't care about party or person. I care about policy. What will the election mean policy-wise? And again, the top of the ticket. So basically, we've got Kamala Harris and Donald Trump is the de facto nominees, if you will, today. You also have RFK. You do have a third-party choice. Last time we had a viable third-party choice that got some national movement was, you got to go all the way back to the 88 Ross Perot, right?
Ross Perot, absolutely.
Yep. And so, we're going to talk a lot about the election going forward. So not to get into that today, but what I want people to think about is, what will the tax policies look like post-election, depending upon who gets elected? And we build scenarios for our clients that not only do we look at the top of the ticket, Lee, but will we have a split Congress with a Republican in the House, or we have a split Congress, a Democrat in the White House, or we have control by one side and the White House the other side, and vice versa, or do we have all three under one control? The disruptive one is when you have all three under one control, Republican or Democrat, because they can vastly move quickly and change policies that planners may not have time to react to, right? So
right.
What we do is we forecast and we do proactive planning and thinking, okay, we have to pivot in this direction. So for instance, Kamala has openly said she wants the top tax rate to be around 70%. And people think, oh my God, that's crazy. No, if you study our tax code in the history, we've had income tax for 111 years, and the average top tax bracket for the 111 years is over 63%. That's the average in the last one. So this today, the top tax bracket, I know that's where I sit, is at 37%. That is extremely low. Now, I do not believe that even if Donald Trump and all Republicans were to win, that we could keep tax rates low indefinitely because as of the 35 trillion we talked about. So we believe that tax rates will probably flip back. And of course, under current law, they flip back the Trump tax cuts, if you will. Corporate stay intact, but for personal returns, all of our brackets are set to go up 2 to 4%, depending on what bracket you're in at the end of next year. So you have less than 18 months with our current tax system. So there are things that I know you're already doing for your clients that they can be mitigating their retirement tax bill, if you will, going forward. And that is by, if you have qualified dollars, as 90% of the people that walk in our doors, right, have money in 401ks or 403bs, the TSP, IRAs. These are dollars you've been kicking the can on down the road to collect tax dollars, and you can move them to a tax-free or a tax advantage account. And there's a myriad of things you can do. The most common is the Roth IRA, but there's other options as well. But you can move those dollars to a Roth and pay those discounted tax rates today and never pay tax on those dollars again. Now, depending on the client's taking income, that would regulate how fast you would do this and all that.
Sure.
But most of our clients here in the Midwest, we call them Midwest millionaires. They walk in, they're very low debt or no debt. They're savers, and they won't spend their money. And so for many of them, they want us to make sure that we're going to be beneficiaries, are going to get the most efficient receipt of those dollars. And well, if it's in a Roth, they can inherit those dollars tax-free pending estate or inheritance taxes. But so let's just talk about what you did since you came, because that was several years ago you came and you started accelerating Roth conversions for your clients. So what does that look like for your client?
Yeah, so I would say probably, so every year since then, or really every year, 4 years, probably in the last 4 years. 4 years ago, I did more Roth conversions than I've ever done, probably combined in the history of me being in the business. I've been in the business about 18 years or so. And then the next year, I probably did twice as much the next year. So it's just been a snowball because people agree that taxes are going to increase. And I tell people all the time, there's a 4-letter word of why taxes are going to increase, and it's math. I mean, you put out all the numbers there. They have to increase. Now the debate is when it's going to increase and all those kind of things. But like you said, under current law, we know that the Trump tax cuts or the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, that is going to lapse the end of next year. So Roth conversions have been probably the front and center. But I'll tell you this, man, what you and I both do workshops, and when I poll the audience, I'm like, how many of you think taxes are going to increase? Almost every hand in those rooms will go
Absolutely.
up. But man, sometimes I struggle with getting people to actually take action and on a conversion strategy. And I think people hate taxes so much, David, and you and I hate taxes as well. I think people hate taxes so much. Sometimes they just stick their head in the sand or kick the can down the road and just think, it's going to take care of itself. But man, you can't do it. I mean, we're now, when we first started this, we're like, all right, we got 4 years or 5 years under this current law to, because taxes are on sale. Now we're down to 2 this year and next year, unless Congress intervenes. And,
Well,
who knows what's going to happen.
One of the things a lot of clients and a lot of advisors are not talking about is not only are taxes on sale, if you want, right, legislatively discounted, but even after that goes away, Roth conversions, at least in my humble opinion, will still make sense because of the hidden tax they're then going to pay on these larger RMDs later in retirement, IRMA penalties, Medicare, B&D, and so many people have no clue that this is coming. And, a client that is 65 today that has $2 million saved in an IRA, if they just defer to RMD age and say earn 6% a year, by the time they're 90, they don't get Social Security anymore. It's wiped out by IRMA. That's how big these penalties get. And people are just like, wait, what? I'm like, yeah, we explain this with software and math. I love it. You said, hey, listen, it's just math, right? This isn't, and I'm not going, taxes are going to 70% because somebody said it. No, let me show you what the law says they'll be next year. And let me show you what the savings are just on those numbers alone. Now, the other thing, Lee, is again, I'm a massive researcher and data hound, and Stanford University put out a study. It's 2 Januaries ago now, that said, regardless of who gets elected, based on our trajectory and the debt we had mentioned earlier, taxes are going to go up across the board 40% by 2030, period. And now they gave an option in the paper, or the government cuts its spending by 30%. I have to laugh at that one.
Yeah.
You think that's
which one is going to happen? Yeah, no, they're not going to do that. And you make a good point. You were saying you don't really talk politics too much. I don't get into that on the show either. People know where we stand politically, but man, people that think a politician is going to save you, you're flying blind there, because politicians, their number one job is to get reelected, but what they're great at is spending other people's money. So I don't see them cutting back their expenses. I don't see it. It's not going to happen.
No, and here's the other thing that's really important. As our boomers, which are most of our clients, baby boomers, like I'm Gen X, right? So the first Gen X turns 59 and a half, a red letter age for guys like us, because that's the first time they can potentially move or de-risk their portfolios in 401ks and the TSP and the like. But we're now having Gen Xers step into retirement. Baby boomers, though, we're at 14,300 a day, peak baby boomer years. This year, 1959 was the highest birth rate in our history during that run. And so those folks are turning 65 today. Here's the thing: as they go forward, when you get older, you tend to get fiscally more conservative. Well, you've worked your whole life, you save money. It makes sense why. Here's the problem, though. The Gen X generation, my generation, we're only half the size of the boomer generation. So we almost don't matter politically because we don't have enough bodies to go pull the lever to shift things. But the generation behind me does. There's over 96 million millennials, and they vote very different. And again, not to say if it's right or wrong, but they believe in more socialistic activity, if you will, spreading the wealth around. And those are the people that are going to be at the ballot box and making decisions. Those are people you're going to be electing to Congress. So by 2034, so that's 10 years out, 70% of the makeup of Congress will be millennials or Gen Zers.
Right. So that's scary. I thought we were going to talk horror stories on the podcast.
What I'm trying to explain, though, is just understanding their thought process. And I read books on demography, demographics, et cetera. You really need to understand what they will position as a priority. Now, it doesn't mean they won't, free markets won't work, because capitalism always comes around, right? And always wins out.
It does.
But the problem is, who are they going to try to steer their incentives to? The aging boomers that are going to, expiring? Or are they going to focus the incentives on their generation, which is the biggest voting bloc? They're going to have to, their constituents, if you will, right? And so that is really important for people to factor into their thought process of where tax rates may be 10 years from now. Because here's the great news. They've never retroactively gone back and changed taxes for a previous year. Twice we've retroactive the year we're in. Okay, so I know the history of the tax code inside out. So what I'm telling you is, if you do some of these actions, put money into the right kind of trust, put it into Roth IRAs, put it into asset protection mode, put it into tax-free accounts, they can't undo that. People always wonder, what if they change the rules? They can't. They can't go back and undo a previous legislative action. They've never done it in history. They will change it and make it harder for people in the future to make these moves, which is why it's so imperative people take action and take heed now and listen to competent advice from folks like you and I.
Hey folks, Lee Perkins here. I wanted to tell you about our brand new book called Next Phase, How to Retire in a Year or Less Without Regrets. It's all about helping you prepare for the next phase of your life, whatever that looks like for you. So, if you're ready to make the most of your next phase, or if you're already retired and aren't sure you're doing all you can to get the most out of your retirement, then you'll want a copy of this book. All you have to do is text Next Phase to 478-475-2050, and we'll send you a copy right away. You can also access additional resources and register for one of our upcoming workshops at our website, www.myretirementclarity.com. Thanks for listening. Now back to the show. Yeah, people, I get the question pretty often, well, what if they change the rule? Because, we're both big fans of Roth. What if they change the rules and now they're going to go back and tax the Roth? I will usually draw a picture on the whiteboard. I'll draw a big circle, and then I'll draw a teeny circle that's almost a dot. I'm like, if you look at the money that's in the United States, the IRA, 401k, it's the big pool of money. The little dot, that's the amount of money that's in a Roth IRA. So where are they going to go? It's like asking a bank robber, well, why'd you rob the bank? And his answer is because that's where the money is. That's where the money is. Yeah, that's where the money is. On the government sort of has a bullseye on in the qualified accounts, and obviously that's why they force us to take distributions from money. Like you said, I have a hard time getting my clients to spend money.
What does every politician want when they're trying to pass legislative action? They want to know there's revenue to cover and pay for those expenses. So just your illustration, then we got that big round circle and the little dot. This is where they'll let you take money at a discounted rate today because you're paying them today. They want the government revenue. So by you converting that to a tax-free account, they're not worried about what's over here. You did your fair share. You paid your tax bill. Now, what you and I do is help make it more efficient. We don't want to just move the whole thing in one day and pay the top tax rate. And that's where the planning that I help advisors like Lee do and the software, et cetera, make you get the maximum efficiency of moving those dollars across the aisle. So legislatively, don't worry about it. It's already over here. What they will do is they will stop you from being able to put too much money in there at lower tax rates in the future. Now, they may also, just legislatively, very likely to happen. Let's say you moved $1 million, and let's just say you moved it all today. You got a $1 million IRA and you paid 37% and you moved it all, 370. So you only got 630 in the Roth. I try to explain to people, I'd rather have the 630 in the Roth than the $1 million in the IRA today, any day of the week, because this now compounds tax-free for the rest of my life. And if I don't need it, and I most likely won't, I'll be able to pass it to my children and they can leave it in the account for 10 more years due to the Secure Act and take it out 100% tax-free at some day in the future. Now, I do believe because of the need for tax in the future, they may cap Roth IRAs. They may create RMDs over, say, $10 million. That has already been floated in committee. So in other words, if your Roth IRA was able to grow to 10 million, they may make you take 50% of whatever that. So if it was 10 million and it grew at 20% that year and went to 12 million, they may make you take half of what's over that out as an RMD, $1 million, but that's a tax-free distribution.
Tax-free event.
And people go, well, then why would they do it? Because those dollars are now back in circulation, creating taxes and creating economic activity. The tax code, this is what's so important for people to grasp, Lee, is not meant to penalize you. There's not loopholes. There are incentives, like the Roth conversions is an incentive. Just so you know, Roths have been around since 1997, Lee, and up until 2010, you could not do an unlimited conversion. You could only convert up to the income limit, the same as the contribution limit. In 2010, we created unlimited Roth conversions. Why? We're incentivizing you to take money out and give it to the tax man now because they need it, and then put the balance into the Roth. So they're incentivizing this behavior because they want the revenue. So we try to explain to people, they're not penalizing you, they're incentivizing you, but nobody understands the tax code's actually written to incentivize moves. That's why we have a tax code. That's why it's not a flat rate. Otherwise, we just have a flat tax rate. It'd be really simple. We wouldn't need the IRS.
Yeah.
No, that's a novel idea.
Exactly. Yeah. Oh, well, maybe that'll come about one day. But there's too many people that have jobs, and that'll of course never happen. Hey, you mentioned something about the forced income, and I know we'll probably get to RMDs in a little while. Now, forever RMDs, or for those of you that don't know, that's a required minimum distribution. That's forced income. For years and years, it was 70.5. Then it went to 72, and then quickly it went to 73. It's going to 75. I want to hear from you because I know your answer. Is that a good thing or a bad thing that they increase that age?
Well, it's a bad thing if you don't do anything. If you just continue to defer your dollars and think it's a good thing, as AARP and all these folks out there that pushed for this think it is,
Right.
it's actually a bad thing. It's a great thing if you start to get proactive because it gives you more time to do things like Roth conversions and maybe take smaller Roth conversions each year. The goal would be to have your account emptied or near empty before you ever had to take an RMD and have all that money shift into a Roth with the least tax lifetime liability ever paid as possible. And that's what we try to maximize for clients. But if you let it keep deferring, and we tell the story all the time, clients just like, hey, I got this $500,000 in IRA. We don't need it. We do a lot of teachers. We have a lot of folks that have teacher pensions here, Social Security 1, Social Security 2, and then pension 1, and some interest income from their CDs, finally paying 5% again. So they've got 120, 140,000 in income. And right here in Omaha, man, you live fine in retirement for that. But then they've got this $500,000 or $700,000 or $800,000 or $1 million in the retirement accounts, the Vanguard 403B or the TSP or whatever. And they're like, hey, we don't want to touch it. Can you help manage it for us? Take some risk off, et cetera, do all the things we do. But we don't really want to touch because we don't pay taxes until we have to. Just keep it until RMD age. And for people that are only 60 years old today, that's now, as you mentioned, 75. So that's 15 years out. On normal market performance, it might double twice in that time period. So if you got a $500,000, it's now $1 million, and then $1 million is now $2 million. Now that RMD is over $80,000, forced income to you, and not only are you going to be in a higher tax bracket on your pension, social, but now you're going to pay Medicare penalties, B and D, not only you, but if you're married, your spouse. So one RMD distribution, unmanaged, can create 8 taxes, 8 different taxes, Lee.
Yeah,
on one distribution. And people are like, wait, what? And now, because it depends on what state you live in, obviously, et cetera. So here in Nebraska, we still have state income tax. So, and we still tax retirement accounts. Unfortunately, our neighbors across the river in Iowa don't tax those accounts. So we talk to clients about, because we have some clients consider moving to Iowa, and we explain, hey, tax wise, this is what it does. Healthcare wise, this is what it does. And you got to factor all those things in, right? But anyway, so it's a great point you bring up. RMDs, nobody's thinking about this and the unintended consequences of having success in that IRA, because those big distributions are going to create other taxes and other penalties you're probably not aware of. And in some states like ours, it could disqualify you for things like a homestead exemption, too much income. So lots of things to think about, which is why it's really important you work with a holistic style planner, in my opinion, that is looking at not just your investments, right? They're looking at your healthcare, your medical, your legacy planning, your risk management, and of course, your taxation issues, right?
Yeah, exactly. Hey, you mentioned earlier, if, rather than having $1 million in an account, in a qualified account, you'd rather have 650 or 700 in a Roth IRA. I agree 100%. And I always tell people, I wish that when you got your statement, your IRA statement, I wish there was a way that they could tell you what percentage was yours.
The IRS
and what percentage is theirs.
Yeah.
Because psychologically, people are like, oh man, I got $1 million, but if I convert this, I'm only going to have, $700,000 or whatever it is. But I'm like, it's the same money. That $1 million, that is not all your money. And I do the same kind of scenario that you do. I'll put it up there and say, how much is this is yours? And they're like, well, all of it's mine. I'm like,
Well, to your analogy, what I do is I walk to the whiteboard in the conference room. I draw the big circle and I said, this is your stuff, right? And then what I do is and I draw a pie out of it, which is about 33% of it. This is your silent partner in your business. Pretend your IRA is your business. You're an entrepreneur like me. You started a business and it's grown in value and it's worth $1 million. Then somebody comes knocking. Hey, Lee, I own 33% of your business. Well, did you invest any of the capital? No. Did you take any risk? No, but I want 33% of it. And you're like, but you don't have to pay me. I'll let you keep growing if you don't want to pay me. You're like, yeah, go away. I don't want to talk to you. So you grow the account, and 15 years later, it's now $2 million. And now they come knocking and you have taken, guess what? They're like, hey, we want 44% of it. Wait, what? Yeah, that's what the tax code does to you. So you're letting your silent partner grow and grow and grow. I want to get rid of my silent. You want to buy your partner out at the smallest dollar amount possible if you have a growing business, right?
Correct.
So you
pay
need
it
to
off
think
at
about
a known rate.
Yeah.
Pay the taxes at a known rate rather than an unknown rate in the future. 100%.
And so I'm excited for you coming back to the mastermind. And thanks for letting me know you're going to be up here. I got to get married. Hey, you should have told me that, my assistant. But
All good, all good.
We're going to show you a couple of new wrinkles while you're here to actually help expedite these Roth conversions. A couple of new tax strategies in your back pocket to help clients that have these larger IRAs move dollars across the aisle and drastically reduce what they have to pay even under current rates. So really excited to share that with you when you're up here. But for those that are listening, exactly, this is why you work with independents versus the big box retailer investment houses. And I worked at one of those. We won't go through that here, but I worked for a company that was around since 1896 and got bought out by a much larger company back in 2000. So you can do some research to figure out who that was. But I worked in the investment world, and that's what we did as investments. We didn't talk to you about risk management. We're like, hey, I'm trying to grow your money. We didn't talk to you about healthcare. We didn't talk to you about Medicare. We certainly weren't allowed to talk to you about taxes in these organizations, right? We were focused on investments. And sometimes I joke, I'm like, well, are you, when people walk in that are working with these organizations, they're like paying them a full fee, at least what I consider to be a full fee. And I'm like, how'd you get comfortable paying a full fee and they're only working on one of 5 critical areas you need for retirement? So this is, again, why you need to understand working with a planner, just not an investment guy or gal. And again, accumulation advisors, as I kind of call them, are great people. They help you pick investments based on your risk tolerance and time horizons and grow your little pot of gold, if you will. But when it comes time to decumulate, very different math, very different risk metrics, and you must understand the taxation liabilities you're going to face now and in the future.
Yeah, no doubt. Because the tax code, it's set up for people that know it. And if you can apply the things that we talk about and you use for our clients, and you're for your clients and we use for ours, you're going to be ahead of the game. And it kills me that people are paying a fee to somebody and they're retired. So they're out of the accumulation phase. And that person, their advisor, is not helping them with taxes, not helping them with Social Security decisions or determining how much of their Social Security is going to be taxable. One of the other things you asked me earlier, some of the things that we've implemented, the donor advised fund, the DAF.
Yes.
That's a great concept. Can you spend a minute or so on that?
Absolutely. So this is a strategy I personally use every single year. So a donor advised fund can be used in a myriad of ways, but the simplest and most common way for us to use it is for our retirees. Because we're just like we're talking about, and we're not asking somebody to give something they wouldn't already give. So one of the questions we always ask, are you philanthropic? Do you tithe to a local church or synagogue or mosque? Just who do you give charity dollars to? Right. And once we have an understanding, and a lot of our clients do, and it's part of my DNA, I do, and we're blessed to give to a lot of great charities here in town. So we just want to know what you're normally giving. So I'll give you an example. Couple making $120,000 a year, and they were giving $10,000 a year to a local Catholic church. And that was their tithe, if you will. Wanted to support it. They plan on continuing. We always ask, do you plan on continuing? Yes, it's important to us. Okay, great. All we want to know this reason is so we can use some tax money, because the standard deduction is so big now, right? A married couple over 65 has got basically about $33,000 in standard deduction now, right? So they don't need receipts. So that 10 grand in charitable giving doesn't give them any tax breaks. And so what we want to do is we want to utilize a donor advised fund. So if we have the resources, and this could be a stock account or mutual fund or ETF account that's non-qualified dollars, or it could be just cash in the checkbook. And what we want to do is we want to pre-donate a couple of years of donations. So let's say in this example, 5 years of that 10 grand or $50,000. Now the client has to have this available. But if we pre-give $50,000 into a donor advised fund, and that's very simple, you, the client, are the donor, and you advise the fund when to send money to who and at what time, what charity. So you pre-give the donation, you get the tax write-off the moment you do it. So what that lets us do, let's just say our Roth conversion plan for this client, let's just say they had $800,000 in an IRA, and I was planning on moving 80 grand a year into the Roth IRA to keep them in the same tax bracket at 22%, soon to be 25 on their plan. And we know they give the 10 grand away. So what we do is we put $50,000 in the donor advised fund. Now I'm able to move another $50,000 from their IRA to the Roth IRA and not pay a single penny in tax this year on doing it. I've accelerated the Roth conversion. I've accelerated the compounding of tax-free dollars for their kids, and we actually know how to show them the benefit to their kids. all by doing the same giving the client was doing anyway. In other words, the donor advice fund will now take 10 grand and take it to St. Vincent's or whoever the charity was this year, next year, the next year, and there. And the donor advice fund grows while it's in there. And you don't have to take risk with it if you don't want. We can buy treasuries and just grow it at 5%, so you can increase your tithe every year by 5%. And after 5 years, you can lather, rinse, and repeat. Do it again. And of course, our strategy here is to do it until you hit RMD age, right? Required minimum distribution age, which is going to be, as you said, one of 4 ages, depending on what year you're born. But say it's 75. So for the first 10 years, we did 2 rounds of the donor advice fund. When they're 75, I still have some money left in the IRA. Then we switch to the QCD, qualified charitable distribution, where now I take 10 grand from the IRA and take it right to the church, and they never get taxed on it. And we can zero out their tax liability. And for clients that do not have forced income from pensions, taxable income, so if you just have Social Security 1 and Social Security 2 or railroad retirement, if you have no other taxable income, Lee, your tax bracket can be 0, because if you had Roth 1, Roth 2, Social Security 1, Social Security 2, 4 checks coming every month, you would literally be in a 0% tax liability. And we get about 40% of our clients there by age 75. That's kind of our goal if we can. Can't do it for everybody.
Yeah, we're not quite at 40% yet. We've run the numbers. We're about 30%. Quick question for you. What is the length of time or your average Roth conversion plan? We're at about 4 to 6 years. We're trying to get
it takes on average, actually, because we have some clients with some pretty large ones as well. So it takes about 6 years on average to get the majority of conversions done for clients. Now, some clients are choosing to accelerate that when we tack on some of these advanced strategies that will actually help you do it. And you'll learn some of that next week when you're up here. And so what we want to do is help the client see. So we even build what we call the nuclear option, if you will. And it's, hey, if election goes the wrong way for tax legislative ways, and there's a clean sweep to one side of the aisle, and we're faced with 70% tax rates as soon as 2026, we're moving it all, right? We're going to move it all, and then take that 37% tax break and use some other strategies and try and chip it down to the 20s. And I can tell you, we have clients that have $5 million, $7 million in IRAs. These are very large IRAs, and so it's simply listen, we're prepaying now to give your kids a whole lot more later. And we show them the math. We run these plans out to whatever age they want, but we typically choose 90 just to show them how the math works. But it's a great point is how long does it take? Well, it depends on the situation, the client, and the other resources. And if we're going to add one of the other 120 tax strategies to help chip away at that. So we've got several of them that we can help accelerate the Roth convert. And some people just want to slow play it, and that's okay. Either way, we end up saving the client money and then give them the freedom. I call it a freedom account. Or you get that money in the Roth, you don't have to touch it. There's no RMDs. And if you want to take 80 grand out and buy an RV, okay. Doesn't change your Medicare. By the way, Roth is not eligible for IRMA penalties or Medicare B and D. So with those Roth distributions, if you decide one year you're taking all the grandkids to Disney World and spend 40 grand on a vacation you never would have done otherwise, you take it from the Roth, you're not changing your tax liability. You're not changing anything that you're qualifying for under federal government rules. You're not changing Medicare. It's so important to understand, again, how all these things fit together. And so that's why I'm so passionate about teaching advisors across the country. You know, I've been doing this for a while now. And it's so exciting when we get advisors come in and hear my message for the first time, because there's so many things we do. And for those listening on Lee's side of this podcast, yes, this is how I talk all the time, 100 miles an hour.
It's a little bit fast. You're not from around here, but hey, it's all good.
Boy, you didn't go up around here, did you?
Yeah, exactly. So I was telling one of my newer staff members this week, and we're trying to grow out a team, not as large as yours, but we're trying to grow out a team to be able to support some of the strategies. And I was telling one of our newer team members that I was talking with you, and you're from Omaha, Nebraska. She's like, you should have him send us some steaks. And I was like, I'm not sure that true folks know that's probably like that's down. That's not up to the standards of probably a legit steak in Omaha.
well, yeah. The company Omaha Steaks, I actually retired the president of them a couple of years ago, and it's decent quality steak. But you're going to go to one of my favorite steak restaurants next week when you're here. You're going to get one of the best steaks of your life. So we have one of the top steakhouses in the entire country. But we have about 15 amazing steakhouses. In fact, everything I get at my house, I have all grass-fed raise prime only grade beef. I have two brothers that have a farm. They raise the cattle front to end, slaughter it, and deliver it right to my house that I eat at my house. I'm very particular on my food supply.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I
the
hear
meat
you.
that we get here, we have friends come in and lots of family in Florida. I lived in Florida for 3 decades, so my wife's family's from there. We have family in South Carolina, family in North Carolina, family in Tennessee. So when they come to visit, in fact, we got somebody coming this Saturday to visit. We always, pull out the freezer and get a couple of those awesome steaks out and put them on the grill their first night, and they're like, "Oh my God, this is good."
Yeah,
So yeah,
it's
we are
awesome.
blessed and spoiled. Yes, we are believers in red meat.
That's a good thing. That's awesome. So I know we're kind of getting towards the end of our time here. Maybe, David, what would be something, maybe a strategy or something that might be not as well known, or something that maybe you'll tell us about next week to the group that's going there, but something that maybe a listener to the podcast would be surprised to know, or something like they might be able to implement.
Well, so depending on clients' resources, right? And one of the things we can do is we can use a strategy called CLAT, C-L-A-T. This is a charitable lead annuity trust. We believe that interest rates are going to start to come back down, right? And most of us are forecasting that. I don't believe it's going to be maybe quite as fast as some people think, but again, I'm not this great prognosticator. I react to what happens. But I will tell you, there is a discount rate from the IRS that determines the value of the charitable gift you get when you set one of these up. I'll give you an example. If I donated $100,000 to a charitable lead annuity trust, what is happening is it's the income that trust generates. Basically, there'll be a distribution every year that goes to a charity. At the end of the trust, I get the asset back, or whatever the value of it is, or I could use it to pass it on for generation skipping. I could give it to my grandkids, my kids, whatever I want to do. So give example, but the discount rate during COVID went to the lowest rate it's ever done, which increases the size of the charitable gift. And we're going to go over this when you're here next week and teach you how to do this. But in the example, at that time, you could have put $100,000 during COVID. The discount rate went all the way down to 0.4. All right. It's about 4.5% today. So went to 0.4. So we were able to, simple example math, put $100,000 into a charitable leads annuity trust, kick out 5% income to a charity. So $5,000 every year for 20 years. At the end of 20 years, the client got back $140,000.
Wow.
So met their charitable goals and had their asset grow and come back to them without any tax on it until the last year. So, and got a discount for all that charitable giving up front, and again, to accelerate a Roth conversion or something else that you want to do. I always tell people, you don't know what you don't know, right? And so that's why we're so passionate about educating people on how these strategies work. And as rates go down, that's one of the strategies that will come to the forefront again. We'll talk about that when you're here next week. But yeah, we're running out of time on our side. I've got to go.
Yeah.
I actually got an appointment I got to go jump into here. But
I hear you.
This has been fun, and I'm really excited to have you back up. So glad to have you on our show, and likewise being on yours. Pretty cool. So we'll look forward to seeing you up here real soon.
All right. Sounds good, man. Take care. Have a good rest of the week.
All right. Thanks, Lee.
All right.
Bye.
See you, man. Bye. Hey there, Lee Perkins here. If you're like a lot of folks, you've been listening to this podcast for a long time now. But I've got an important question for you. Have you implemented any of the ideas that we've discussed on the show? If you haven't, what are you waiting on? You know you're not getting any younger. So here's my challenge. Don't just consume the content. Our number one goal for this podcast is to help you close the gap between what you know and what you implement. So if you're ready to implement, take that first step today and visit www.talkwithjlp.com and schedule a 15-minute phone call with one of our advisors, and we'll help you close the gap between what you know and what you implement so you can enjoy the next phase of your life. Now is your time. Don't procrastinate any longer.
Investment advisory services are offered by J.L. Perkins Wealth Management, a registered investment advisor and insurance agency. Information is for illustrative purposes only and does not constitute tax, legal, or investment advice. Always consult with a qualified tax, legal, or investment professional before taking any action.